Breaking news coming to us now. Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor has died at the age of 93. The Supreme Court releasing a statement saying she passed away in Phoenix, Arizona of complications related to advanced dementia and respiratory illness. O'Connor was a pioneer, becoming the first female Supreme Court justice. She was appointed to the High Court by President Ronald Reagan and served from 1981 to 2006. Back in 2009, former President Obama awarded O'Connor the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's top civilian honor. Deputy Political Director Joe St. George joins us now from Capitol Hill. Joe, a trailblazer for sure in the legal system.
Yeah, and another trailblazer that we've lost just within the last few weeks. I immediately think of the fact that within the last few days, really, we've lost Rosalynn Carter, we've lost Henry Kissinger, and now we've lost Sandra Day O'Connor. I'm reading now from the Sandra Day O'Connor Institute, which is based in Arizona, her legacy, if you will. Multiple observers, the Institute says, have called her the most influential woman in American history. Now, of course, this is her Institute saying that, but let's dissect that just for a moment if we can. This country has never had a female president, but she was the first on the Supreme Court, and she wasn't just a female justice on the Supreme Court. She was one of the most influential justices for decades on the Supreme Court. How about this for a statistic? In 360 Supreme Court cases decided 5-4, she cast the deciding vote for the majority, including 114 cases where she wrote an opinion. So she was nominated in 1981 by Ronald Reagan, but she was certainly nothing but a guaranteed vote for conservatives. On some issues, she would side with the more liberal wing of the justices, and she helped shape law, policy, legal opinions in this country for decades and decades to come. So clearly another pioneer, another influential individual who for decades, again, she served more than 24 years in the Supreme Court, the first female justice, again, appointed by former President Ronald Reagan back in 1981, passing away on this Friday at the age of 93 following complications with dementia, as reported by the Supreme Court. Another major pillar in American history lost within the last few days.
Joe St. George, thank you so much. Joining us now is Alexander Volokh, a former clerk for Justice O'Connor. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us first about your experience working with Justice O'Connor. As Joe was just mentioning, I mean, just a trailblazer, someone who just shattered glass ceilings for women everywhere. Her legacy is lengthy and it's amazing to read back on. But what was it like working with her?
Yeah, it was a tremendous experience. I was her clerk during her very last term as an active justice on the Supreme Court. She literally announced her retirement when I was about to start clerking for her, and she in fact wasn't going to serve that term at all because John Roberts was going to replace her. But then Chief Justice Rehnquist died just at that time, and John Roberts became Chief Justice instead, and she agreed to stay on for however long it took for President Bush to find a replacement. So she ended up being there for another half a year until Justice Alito was confirmed. So that was a tremendous time. It was a very historical time, and I just felt very privileged to be able to spend time with really a giant of the law.
There will no doubt be no shortage of reflections on her pioneering ways, but I'm curious, since you worked alongside her, her personality, what drove her, what was she like to work with?
Well, just looking at her at that age, she sort of projects the stereotype of a grandmotherly figure. And it turns out that in this case, the stereotype was absolutely right. She was just very grandmotherly to everybody, and she was just such a nice person. But I think more important is she came to the job with a certain set of very strongly held beliefs. For example, she was instrumental in crafting the moderate Supreme Court position on abortion, the moderate Supreme Court position on affirmative action, a moderate position on religious displays, and just in many areas of the law, she brought this kind of moderate, very pragmatic attitude. And at the same time, her experience growing up on a ranch in Arizona, which she wrote about in her memoir, Lazy Bee, she had all this cowgirl decor in her office. That was very important to her, and you can see that in her her federalism decisions. She really thought that the states ought to be respected as co-equal governments to the federal government, that they have their sovereignty of their own. And so she actually was very strong, she had a very strong voice in favor of the federalism revolution of the 1990s.
What do you think? I mean, with a career as long as what she had, I'm sure there were things that she had seen, things that she had said, different decisions that she had made. What do you think will be her lasting legacy?
Well, you know, I don't know whether justices really have a legacy that lasts so far beyond their tenure on the court. I think that what they're important for is the decisions that they make while they're there, the majority opinions that they join, those cases where they are pivotal. Inevitably, when new justices come onto the court and the ideological center of the court changes, many of those decisions are going to be overruled. So her moderate position on abortion has been overruled. Her moderate position on affirmative action has been overruled. Many things have been overruled, but I think that's just inevitable, that as the composition of the court changes, then doctrine changes. But for those, you know, decades, the 2.5 decades that she was on the court, she really molded it to in her image, just precisely because she was so much in the middle. She was the center of the Supreme Court on many issues for a long time, and that's why, really, if you wanted to know what the law was on a particular point, you know, one good way of predicting it is to say, what does Justice O'Connor think about that?
And she's certainly getting some high praise. You're touching on the key issues that she was involved in. I'm reading the New York Times obituary right now, and it says, during a crucial period in American law, when abortion, affirmative action, sex discrimination, and voting rights were on the docket, she was the most powerful woman in the country. Do you agree with that?
That's absolutely right.
Certainly an impact. Alexander Volokh, former clerk for Justice O'Connor, thank you so much for coming on such short notice and reflecting on her life. We really appreciate it.
We'll be right back.